Welcome to the Maine Basketball Rankings podcast. I am your host, basketball dad nerd, Lucas McNelly. Week 2 is in the books, so we're gonna have week 2 overreactions. I've decided to turn this into a gimmick. It's, you have the whole thing, week 1 of the NFL, everybody overreacts. Oh my gosh, this team's terrible, this team's amazing. And I thought, let's just overreact every week. So I thought about having Adam do it every week, but his suggestion was to get different people, and maybe that's because he doesn't want to talk to me every week, or maybe it's because that's a good idea. And so Jarod Richmond is here today to overreact to week 2. Um, and then if you want to get into the minutia of the model, we've got a new top 10. It shook up a little bit. So the trick I had was that I was using New Hampshire. These New Hampshire teams are such a hassle. Um, and Massachusetts, because you play these teams, Salem, Mass, whoever, and like I can't build a model for Massachusetts and for New Hampshire because that's insane. And so I was lumping them all together as just one team. And then I realized I think the whole time I knew that was not a great idea, but it was a fix. It was a cheap, quick fix. But it was really skewing the model this week because what you had was York beat a New Hampshire team that wasn't very good and beat them by a lot. And then Thornton Academy, who I think everyone agrees is one of the best teams in the state, lost to Bedford by a significant amount. And so if you tell the model that this team beat Thornton Academy by a lot and then lost to York by a lot, well, then how good is York? York must be really, really, really good. So they jumped up to number 1 in the rankings, and I'm like, well, that can't, we can't do that. So I've had to break them out and give them their own separate rankings. And what I'm doing, and I don't love it as a fix, is I'm going each week to Max Prep's state rankings and just basically saying to the model, this team is the equivalent of, if they're ranked 10th in the Max Preps ranking, they're the equivalent profile of the 10th ranked team in Maine. It's not a great fix, but it's better. And so when everything shook out, it made a lot more sense. It still dropped Thornton Academy down further than I thought it would, but that's also week 2, and it's starting to, this year's numbers are starting to kick in, and last year's numbers are starting to fall away. And it's all part of the balancing act, figuring out how that's going to happen and how that works best. Anyway, so long explanation. So there's new rankings, and Thornton Academy fell. Levitt fell out of the top 10 because they blew out Brunswick, and Brunswick's not worth it very much. But it should all stabilize. With that being said, let's get to my conversation. Really great conversation with the jack of all trades himself, Jarod Richmond. Okay, Jarod Richmond is here. Jarod is one of the hardest, most diverse working men in high school sports. He is a coach, he's a broadcaster, he is a media person, he does stats for the MPA, he does it all. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, glad to be here. I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none. So,
How many
man, I think.
how many badges did you have that one year at the tournament? Did you have all of
So
them?
I have, I think I've now, except for athletic trainer, although I think I did get an athletic trainer one, and I'm not an athletic trainer. Again, I know the right people, but
Yeah.
I have quite a few. I have, it's like Pokemon. I've got to get them all. I think I've
Mm-hmm.
got. The only one I don't think I have is like director, and I think that's going to be hard to get from Mike or Mike. So
That could be a tricky one to get, yeah. And
I
you
don't want that job
probably
either. So I don't want to be. I don't want to be like mistaken for that either. I don't want any responsibility.
no.
I'm at a point in my coaching career and my media. I don't want responsibility. I just want to be.
You just want to be there. You could get
Yes,
an official one, like to be a ref. Is that a different one than the one you had
I
for
have one
doing
of those.
stats?
I
Oh,
have
you.
one that's official, and yeah. So
All right. So I thought I'd have you on here to overreact to week 2, because why not push a gimmick as far as you can push it? And then, do you want to start with the Patriots?
uh, yeah, I'll start with the Patriots.
Okay, I'll do the caveat right now that I saw none of this game because I was at an event at the Camden International Film Festival, and shockingly, documentary filmmakers do not prioritize their schedules over NFL games.
I
It's
think there'd be a really interesting documentary on how the Patriots screwed up Mac Jones.
That would be
Uh,
a very interesting documentary.
be a very interesting one. This is a very interesting team. I thought it was a winnable game that they let get away, but it wasn't the same way that they invented ways to lose the last couple of years. Um, I think that you're going to hear more talk about getting Drake May in sooner than later. I don't think
Hmm.
that timeline is going to change at all. They did enough, I think, to win, but they didn't do. They did enough to be in position to win, but they didn't do enough to win. I think that late third down where Brissett got sacked, pushed them back, and then the field goal get blocked. It was kind of like, oh boy, here we go.
Hmm.
But it felt like a regular win, like a regular loss, as opposed to like the I can't believe they just lost like that. This was kind of a like, oh, this is a football loss. You made some mistakes and it cost you not. We're throwing the ball back across the field, tied on the last play of regulation, and having it picked off the other way. Like, so I don't have any real overreaction. I mean, it's disappointment. They should have won the game.
They should have won the game.
I think they're going to win more games. I think the over under was like 4.5 or something like that at the beginning of the year. I think they're
Yeah.
going to exceed that. I wouldn't be surprised. Here's my overreaction. They beat the Jets on Thursday night. There you go.
Ooh. I was wondering, is this not the actual perfect result for them to play really well, to be in a position to beat Seattle, but ultimately lose the game? Because let's not kid ourselves, I don't think we're getting to the playoffs this year and to worry about draft position.
The landscape of the AFC East changed quite a bit when Tua got hurt. I no
There's
longer
that.
feel like, even coming into this week, I didn't feel like the Patriots were the absolute worst team in the AFC East. The Jets haven't really blown anybody's socks off either. So,
And they're the
um,
Jets.
and they're the Jets. So they might not make the playoffs, but I think they want to be competitive. They
Hmm.
want to win football games. I think we as fans want them to win football games. I think week 2 is way too early to talk about tanking and thinking about the draft next year. This team has a really good defense, and they've gone 2 games without turning the ball over, which is totally
Crazy.
different than last year. But the offensive production has to go up a little bit. They need to start. And Jarod Mayo said it. They got to start driving the ball down the field a little bit more. Brissett had some guys open in the secondary. Pass protection is still not great, but it's a team that can run the football pretty effectively. But if they don't start stretching the field vertically, it's going to be a rough season for Ramondre Stevenson after a while. I don't know if he can take that kind of beating for 17 games, but they get Kendrick Bourne back in a couple of weeks too. So,
That'll
um,
help.
and I think that's going to coincide probably with when Drake May gets his first start. But Brissett's getting beat up pretty bad. He came up wincing a couple times on Sunday. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think probably October for Drake May, but it could be earlier. I think I know there's going to be a lot of pounding on the drum that he needs to be starting now and that he's
Right.
going to make a difference in stretching the field vertically. But I don't 100% buy that. I like that they're not just throwing him in there. We've seen all the other rookie quarterbacks in the league and some pretty good rookie quarterbacks have been struggling the first couple of weeks. I mean,
Carolina just benched theirs.
yeah, and he was the number 1 overall pick last year. And, Tevis from Tennessee,
Hmm.
he had some bad turnovers, cost him a game. When Tennessee almost beat the Jets, but it was rookie quarterback play. Aaron Rodgers doesn't look like the Aaron Rodgers of old. He looks like a 40-year-old who is coming off of a major injury with that Achilles. I think Buffalo's the best team in the division by far, especially with Tua getting hurt, and who knows what the timeline for his return is too. So I'm not saying the Patriots are going to win the division by any stretch of the imagination, but I can see a scenario. Here's my overreaction. They could finish second in the division.
Oh, you're listening to
Hopeful optimism on my part.
that might be part of it. I coming into the season, I was like, I just don't want this to be painful to watch. I want, you don't want to be getting blown out by 3 touchdowns every game. So I've been very, I guess, cautiously optimistic that, oh my goodness, they're in these games, they're watchable games.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a reason to be absolutely drunk at 3:30 in the afternoon.
I can think of
you
plenty of
know,
other reasons why, but certainly not the Patriots anymore. And I think that the offense is starting to look competent. Alex Van Pelt is doing a really good job with that. And again, I like that they're not rushing Drake May in and playing in panic mode to like, oh, we've got to get our number 3 overall pick in, and he's going to be the difference maker right away. Yeah, he had an okay preseason, mean, he looked good in that last preseason game, but he was playing with the ones against twos and threes. It's a totally different speed. I did read a really interesting article about how they're using VR to work with him on
Huh.
development and being able to call up any play he wants for the most part against any defense he wants. So I think it's really cool that they're embracing that technology to help accelerate his progression. But he's going to need live reps, and I think his reps, he's been about 30% with the ones, and I think that number is going up a little bit. So I like the progression. I like what they're doing with him. They seem competent on offense. The games are watchable. They're entertaining. It's I said like in week 1 when they beat the Bengals, I hadn't had that much fun watching the Patriots in a long time, and some
Oh
friends I
yeah.
brought read.
Yeah, I'm a little annoyed because I had a parlay where I had them against the spread. I had under Brissett passing yards, over 80 Stevenson rushing yards, and the under at 38 and a half. And so when I pulled up my phone and it was 20-17, I was like, oh, if they could just hold here this final drive. But no, they killed it.
You should. You have a spreadsheet that you've built to help you with your parlays and like your betting algorithm, or do you just kind of go on
I
gut
haven't.
instinct?
I mostly go on gut instinct and I build these ridiculous parlays for Celtics games that are like 10, 11 steps.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've hit 2 of them. So it's like bet $2 to win $350. And I just do it because it makes it more fun to watch the games.
Yeah, I like when you open up the app, whatever app you use, and you're tracking what's going on. It's like a fundraising bar. I'm like, all right, here
It
we
is.
go, we're meeting our goals, and but sadly we didn't meet any goals this weekend. So
Yeah, and it's like Derek White block shot. All right, I got that one.
yeah, just pick a bunch of like really high favorites and like plus minus 1,000 on like 10 legs and make it like even money just for fun.
Yeah. Or you can do the thing where I did during the NCAA tournament where I picked every game and all 16 games of the first day in a parlay. And if you hit all of them, like the money lines, it's something ridiculous. It's like thousands of dollars on a $1 bet.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're not going to hit that, but maybe you do. Like every 10 years or so, I have a really good first round day in the NCAA tournament. So why not?
Yeah. It's
And
like one
speaking
in
of Derek,
9 million to like have a perfect bracket. So
it's impossible. But this is what we're doing it for. But I also saw on Twitter today that some idiot knocked off Derek White's hat at a Colorado State game, and there was a fight.
I saw that tweet. I didn't have a chance to watch the video yet, but I heard it was heated. You just don't
Yeah,
do that. Like
that's a bad idea.
to
You know,
anybody.
they're
Like, don't knock anyone's hat off. It's
yeah.
not
Why
that
would
difficult.
and they're if Derek White, you're gonna have half of Boston like
More
on a
than half the
plane
best.
going to fight.
You're gonna have like 5 of the 6 New England states lining up to come after you. I went down to the parade. There's some people that you wouldn't want to mess with if you
No,
knock his hat off.
no, definitely not. Some guys from Southie.
No, nobody from Boston. Period. End of discussion.
All right, so let's pivot to the high school games this weekend. You called with because you're calling games this year with
Mhm.
WHOU with Rob Kennedy. So you did Bonnie Eagle and Oxford Hills, right?
Yes, we did.
So Bonnie Eagle lost in week 1, correct? To Lewiston,
They lost to Lewiston
and
week 1.
okay, and then my model, which is a guessing game at this early in the season, had them losing this game to Oxford Hills by 2, but it looks like a pretty convincing win.
I thought it was a very convincing win for Bonnie Eagle from the standpoint of, they executed when they needed to and made the plays they needed to win the football game. Um, you know, you're, you're not going to hold Bonnie Eagle down long. They
Right.
were up against Lewiston in week 1. I think it was 12-0 at the half, and they were out gaining Lewiston 3-1. And the discipline factor came in, talking with Coach Kevin Cooper during the week before the game and right before that. So, the wheels just fall off. We made some uncharacteristic mistakes discipline-wise, turned the ball over 4 times. You're not going to win many football games doing that. So they cleaned up a lot of those things that they needed to clean up. It wasn't perfect. They started the game off with back-to-back penalties in the kick game, kicked the ball out of bounds twice. And another critical mistake late in the second quarter, they had Oxford Hills pinned back, had a great 3-and-out going, and picked up a 15-yard penalty That was kind of a unnecessary penalty, and that parlayed into a 90-yard touchdown drive and gave Oxford Hills some life. So, they got a really, they got another test in front of them this week. They're Portland.
Oh,
Portland 2-0, and Portland's handled who they've played so far. Although their game against Oxford Hills was kind of back and forth in week one. They got up 21-0, and the Vikings came back 21-14 right before halftime. Couldn't really get it any closer than that the rest of the game. But that Oxford Hills team is really young. They only brought back 3 seniors from last year. And they have a lot of inexperience, and experience is a really tough teacher, especially in football. I think Oxford Hills is going to be a team that by the end of the regular season is going to be a team that people are not going to want to play. They're figuring a lot of things out. I saw some really, really good things from them. But then they, compounded some things with some mistakes, substitution penalty, false start, couple of 15-yard penalties mixed in, a hold here, pass interference there, those kinds of things. But it was kind of the mental mistakes that got to them again. They cleaned up some tackling stuff, but they've got some really great size. They're a physical football team, but they're a young football team. I think they're not going to be a team that you're going to want to face in the first round of the playoffs. And they've got 7 more weeks of regular season to clean stuff up. But they go to South Portland this week, and South Portland's 2-0. So, there could be a reality where Oxford Hills is 0-3, or they could be 1-2 after this week. So, another good test for them. And they've played tough teams. Portland, tough. Bonnie Eagle, tough. South Portland, 2-0. They're going to be tough. Coach Filio's teams are always tough in the South. So,
is it a thing? Someone said something to me last week about how rare it is for a freshman to contribute in football. Is it more difficult to get a contribution from a freshman or from younger guys in football than it is in basketball? Would you say?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I don't know. I think there's such different skill sets.
Right.
I've seen some really talented freshmen, both in basketball and in football. I think if you have the skills and the talent, especially in Maine, you're going to be able to contribute at any age or any level. Think about some of those teams like Valley and the boys teams. They had some really, like, they had 8th graders contributing and scoring
Oh
and
yeah.
playing really well in the tournament. Why can't I think of their names right now? They just
The
graduated
two
juniors this year.
the
Why?
two guys who scored 1,000 points on like the same day.
Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
their names are escaping me too. I
yes,
know who you're
they are.
talking about though.
I'm in total football mode, but I mean, those guys, so I think, if you're skilled and talented enough, I think it's probably a little easier in like C and D,
Sure.
probably, to contribute as a freshman than maybe an A or B. And I think that's also just a numbers game. I mean, look at some of the rosters, like Thornton Academy has 60, 70, 80 kids on there. You have to be a really, really special freshman to contribute to. Oh, there we go.
If you're
As
just
I was
listening
saying,
to the audio of this, Jared's cat just walked across the
yeah,
screen.
he is. Phoenix. It was a gift from the Spruce Mountain girls team the year that we went to states.
Oh,
So,
that's right. Yeah.
um, shout out to them. So I think it depends on the roster size. If and you can find, there are more places I think to find contribution in football than in basketball. You only got five people on the court. You have 120 minutes to divvy up amongst whatever however many kids on your roster. Where in football, you have offense, defense, punt return, kick return, PAT blocks. There's like 7 or 8 different. There's 88 different positions that you need to
Right.
fill. And on the smaller teams, if you have a freshman who's talented and can physically match the challenge, you get one of your upper level guys a rest for a player two here or there. I just think it's easier on a smaller roster than it would be on a larger roster, like a Levitt roster. I mean, they have 60 kids on their roster, and they have a huge class every year coming in. They have like a class. I was talking to Mike Hathaway a couple weeks ago. Like, they got like 20 some odd 8th graders that are coming up through the pipeline. So
Wow.
like their roster only gets bigger, and that makes it so much harder than that. I think it's probably easier as a freshman to contribute in basketball, but there are enough places, I think, in C and D and football And again, if like you're a transcendent athlete, good coaches will find a place for you.
And in basketball, you could just be the kid who shoots, and that doesn't necessarily, require the grown man muscles to be the kid who can shoot from outside,
Mhm.
or you can stick in the corner and knock down some shots and really contribute.
Yeah, or you can take a kid who's a really good defender, but maybe not good on offense, face guard somebody with that kid,
Mm-hmm.
cycle them through. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can be really, really creative, but I think probably in basketball, I think we see that again. I think in the lower classes where the you don't have as a large of a student body pool to pull from for athletes.
Sure. All right, so let's move on to because this week was Autism Awareness
Hmm.
week, and you're
Yeah.
wearing the shirt. If you're
Yes.
watching the video, it's a very cool shirt. Um, I was hoping to get one at the game I went to, but they didn't have any. So what are you gonna do? So Coney 42-21 over Lawrence in that's sort of the game I think of as the Autism Awareness game,
Mhm.
even though it was all over the state. My model had Lawrence by a lot in this, and I was kind of surprised to see the Coney score.
I think a couple of things. I think Coney has come a long, long way. I think they've done a. I mean, they came on strong at the end of the year last year. That's a good rivalry game. And let's be
Right.
honest, those two teams are going to meet again before this thing is all said and done as well. Um, but I think in week one, in talking to BL after that first game, there was some stuff he felt like they left on the table in the second half against Mesolonsky. They were up big against the Eagles at halftime, and I feel like he took a lot of that week one stuff and wasn't going to leave anything on the table in week two against Lawrence. And that's a very talented Lawrence team. Went to the state game last year. Making some adjustments up front. They graduated some key linemen, but they run the wing T very, very well, and they're a very physical football team, and they put up quite a few points. But Coney made more bigger plays throughout the course of the game, and I'm not surprised that Coney won, and I don't want to say I'm surprised it was that much, but I thought it was going to be a little bit closer than the final score.
What really surprised me was when I ran the rankings for going into week 3, which I haven't published yet. Coney went to number 1, and which was a real surprise to me, and Lawrence was number 2. And then I was having to tweak some stuff because just I'm still trying to work out the details of football, and it's such a short season that it can swing a ton. But one that's an outlier early. Is that an outlier early season model quirk, or are they a legit top 5 team?
Both Coney and Lawrence.
Either, yeah,
Uh,
either one.
I think so. I mean, Parker Morin has a full year under his belt for Coney at quarterback. He had one of the best games passing yardage wise in state history. He's got a really good arm. I mean, it was 14-14 right before halftime, and he hit a long pass right before the halftime whistle and got them up 21-14, and then threw another one to kind of get it to a 2 touchdown lead. And, so I think it's closer than the final score indicates, a 21-point win, but really two big plays at inopportune times for Lawrence kind of really sealed the deal for them. I mean, I think they're both legit in Class B. I think they are extremely legit in Class B. But again, you've got Deering, Kennebunk, and Massabesic all at 2-0 in the South. And then also Falmouth. They're undefeated and haven't given up a point all year. Spencer Emerson.
48-0 against Skowhegan. That was a big surprise, I thought.
Yeah, I think, and Skowhegan, had a pretty solid outing in week one against Mount Blue, if I remember correctly. But Falmouth, I think Falmouth's legit too. It's a really good race in B North, and don't count out Gardner. Gardner with a good overtime win as well this weekend. So to get to 1-1, but
What year is Falmouth's coach in? I know he's new-ish. Is this first year?
This is Spencer's first year.
Okay.
It's his third overall. He's been everywhere. Spencer's a great guy. Great relationship with him. He was at George Washington for a little bit, Division One. He was at Poland for a couple of years before that.
Okay.
Very talented coach, and he's got things going really well for Falmouth right now. And that's going to be a fun game to watch down the line. I'm just going to if I pull up their schedule here, what they've got coming up. But this week we'll find out because they play Coney. So
Oh, okay.
that'll be a really that's a great game coming up this
So
week.
that's game of the day potential.
That definitely has game of the week potential. Yeah, two undefeated teams, and Falmouth is rolling right now too. So, and Coney has a ton of momentum.
Yeah. So one reason Coney went to number one was Thornton Academy lost to Bedford, and because they were number one. So do we have a sense of how good Bedford is? It's this New Hampshire teams
Mm.
are just such a nightmare for the model because I don't know how good Bedford is. Like even like I have no information
Bedford is
on them at all.
extremely good. Bedford is one of the perennial powerhouses in New Hampshire football. They're always near the top. They're always in contention for championships. So, I don't think it's an indicator of what Thornton Academy is. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I think Thornton Academy is one of the best teams in the state. Saw
Mm-hmm.
them in their exhibition game against Levitt. And they've just got, they brought Mauricio Sunderland back. He had a tremendous state game last year. Strong running back. Could be one of their more talented skill groups. And that's saying something for a team that won a state championship last year. So, I'm sure that there are other teams in A who have something that they would like to say about that. I don't want to be. One of the things I was always cautious about was I never wanted to be on anybody's locker room wall. So I don't want to be on anyone's locker room wall. But Thornton Academy is a very good team.
Not even as a broadcaster, you don't want to be on the locker
not
room wall?
even less as a broadcaster. I like it better when they make posters about my Death Star references at the Civic Center than they, I don't want to be a dartboard in some locker room somewhere.
I was a dartboard in someone's locker room last year, and it was the highlight of my year. It was great because they mentioned it in the paper, and it made the Sun Journal story about how Maine basketball rankings had them losing this game, and that motivated them. I was like, yeah, all right.
You motivate a lot of people. The spreadsheet, I should say it's the spreadsheet. It's not you. The
It's not
spreadsheet
me.
has a mind of its own.
It does. It does. Because every so I'll look at it and I'll go, really? Huh. Okay. But there are a lot of coaches who will come up to me after games and be like, hey, we beat the spread. And they're very happy with that.
Hey, it's a win. It's a win.
It's a win.
Yeah.
It's something. It's
something.
So one game that I think a lot of people thought was going to be very close, at least Ryan McLaughlin did, was he was tweeting about was Orono MDI. The model had that as Orono by 3, and they just smoked them 46-6.
Orono is reloaded. What a great turnaround for that program. I mean, they've scored 100 points on the season and have only allowed 12, defending state champions. And I mean, what they did to Old Orchard Beach last year, I mean, unexpected.
Were you there for that?
I was not there for that.
Okay.
But
I wasn't either.
Just the way that they did it, the final score, it was very. I don't remember exactly. I know that it was a blowout.
Yeah, and which was a shock with how good how dominant Old Orchard Beach had been all year, and then all of a sudden just get smacked down.
But then again, like you want to talk about, log jams. I know it's only after week 2, but there's 4 teams at the top of 8-man smell north: Orono, Holton, Stearns, and Ellsworth. All those teams have put up close to 100 points, if not over 100 points on the year. And the most points allowed by any of those 4 teams is Ellsworth. They've let up 56 in 2 games. But, Orono's let up 12, Holton's let up 30, and Stearns has only let up 14. So, Orono, Stearns, a couple of classic LTC teams from way back in the 11-man days for those programs. And they're seeing a revitalization up there in the north. But Orono doing a really good job up there. They really are piecing it together up there, the Red Riots.
What's your take on 8-man in general?
I love 8-man. I think it's been great. And I think what we're starting to see now is teams that are coming back into 11-man because they've done the work in 8-man to rebuild their programs. Maranacook is back in 8-man. 11-man. Matanocook back in 11-man. Mountain Valley back in 11-man. So, Chevrolet did it a couple years ago. So Adirago back in 11-man as well. So they've, kind of moved back from 8-man to D. And I think they're able to do that because they were able to have some success, continue to play football. They weren't rolling out, 18 or 19 kids to play 11-man football like we talked about earlier. There's 88 spots to fill. And if you only have 22 kids or 20 kids and 3 or 4 or 5 of them are undersized freshmen, you're really up against it. I mean, you have to be a really talented team to be able to do that. I think of the Trape team from like 2011, 2012, somewhere in that neighborhood. They had like 21 or 22 kids on their roster, and I think they got all the way to a state game or got close to it. So
Wow.
I think 8-man is doing what it's supposed to do, and teams, when they're ready to jump back up to 11-man, are going to take advantage of that. And a discussion for another time or place, though, is 6 classes sustainable?
Yeah.
I think you look at like C South. There's only 5 teams in C South. Freiburg, Leavitt, York, Cape, and Brunswick. So is that sustainable to stay at 4 or 5 teams in a class? Where in like 8-man, you've got 8 teams in the north and the south there. D, you've got quite a few, 7 or 8 teams in B. Class D is the largest class of any state in the state too. So, I think 8-man is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Yeah, there's 17 teams in Class D across the state. But of course, Class D 2-3 years ago was statewide with only 8 or 9 teams. So, seeing teams coming back up to get their program going in the right direction, I think it's a great thing for Maine football. It provides opportunities for kids to play football that might not otherwise have an opportunity to play. And I think that's the big piece for me, is it's an opportunity for kids.
Right. And it's, it can be, if your numbers are down, it can be really dispiriting to get blown out or have trouble fielding a team. And that's not going to help you attract new kids to the
No.
program. You're like, yeah, do I want to lose 56-0?
And I think
Not
it's
really.
different in football to lose like 56-0 than it is to get blown out by 30 or 40 in basketball every night because of the physical component. I mean,
Hmm.
both suck.
Yeah.
I remember my second year at Halldale, we took a lot of lumps. Only won 1 game that year, and we were on the business end of a lot of 30-point losses. It wasn't fun, but it was part of the growing pains.
Hmm.
But the physical danger of going through the growing pains in basketball is significantly different than going through the growing pains of football.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I want to ask you about that because you did this, and I was gonna mention this in the intro, but we'll do it now.
Mm-hmm.
So my stepdaughter plays for Lincoln Academy's field hockey team.
Yep.
They were just awful last year, like, just really, really bad. And they would be the first ones to say that because it's a new program and they're growing it, and they're trying to figure things out. They scored 6 goals last year, which and they were getting blown out 12-0, 13-0, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a part of it you'll appreciate. So Friday they beat Oceanside 8-3. After last year lost to them 12-0, and it was 7-0 at one point. And then my brother, who you've coached against,
Mm-hmm.
showed up, and I'm like, "Are you just here to see Oceanside lose?" He's like, "Yeah, pretty much." he's, he loves to see that. But like, talk about the difficulties of growing a program from the absolute shambles and getting it to a place where it's competitive.
Uh,
And what's the trick to that?
a lot of hard work, getting the right people in the right places. I was blessed to inherit a really strong youth program. There was really strong program at the youth level at the time I was stepping into that role. It was kind of getting the right people into the middle school program, I think, was the big
Sure.
thing at the time. But it just takes dedication, takes time. It's not an overnight lift. It won't be an overnight lift. And I was pretty darn lucky, my last couple of years to have some really talented players. I mean, KK Wills, Iris Ireland, Lily Platt, Avery Baker, Amanda Trepanier, some really talented kids, but also, getting great leadership from your upperclassmen. Things really turned around for us. We went 12-6 one year, made the playoffs, lost to Trape, but it was the senior group that I had that year that was really bought in about exhibiting the culture I wanted. And I had 3 really awesome captains that year, Olivia Bork, Emily Allen, and Grace Began, and they all bought into what they needed to do as leaders to help the younger talented players understand what it meant to be part of the program and in the program and a varsity athlete. And that culture building that they did with the kids was absolutely huge. So a lot of it wasn't X's and O's stuff. It was just getting an understanding of how to work together. The X's and O's, at the end of the day, one of my favorite quotes that always sticks with me, Skip Capone, who's at Chevrolet now, great coach. I was at a clinic once, and he said, it doesn't matter what you know as a coach. It matters what you can get kids to do repeatedly under stress with success. And for me, that just came from developing a level of trust in our teammates and the people that were around us, that we were all going to do the best we could to do the right thing at the right time and do it with confidence. I always said, I did care what you did on the floor, but if you're going to do something, do it with the confidence that you're doing what you think is the right thing for the team in the moment. If it's not, our job as coaches is to correct it. And if it is, awesome, keep doing it.
I mean, you hear at even the NBA level that, players, like they were talking about this in the Olympics, that players, when they go and they play in the Olympics, the younger guys get as some of them, it's the first time they really see what it takes to be a Kobe or to be a LeBron and the level of professionalism. And so, I mean, these guys are 12 of the best basketball players in the world. So if you can extrapolate that to a freshman in Central Maine, how much they maybe don't realize how little they know until an older player shows them.
Exactly. I think, another part is having that presence. I've been with Zach Keen at Spruce Mountain the last 2 years, and he's omnipresent in everything within that program. He does such a tremendous job up there. He's going to hate that I'm giving him a shout out probably, but he's there on Saturdays with youth stuff. He's, going to middle school games. He's bringing high school players to middle school games. When they run the tournament up there, the JJMs tournament, the varsity players are there helping out with concessions, running the clock, just being seen and being there, being present. And I think he does such an exceptional job of that. And has a large part to do with why that program has been so successful the last few years. I mean, back-to-back runs to a regional final, 1-1, came one point short in a state game. 3 years ago, beat Lincoln Academy in a game that, very few people thought they could win, and they went out and they did it. So he does a really good job. It's that program building. It's not just, when I was a young, initially varsity coach, I had such tunnel vision about like the varsity program. And as I worked through it, that expansion of, it's not just this group here, it's development all the way through. If that was one piece of advice I could give myself way back then, or one piece of advice I could give to somebody in their initial stages of being a varsity coach, is it's very easy to have the tunnel vision for what's like directly in front of you, but you also have to have eyes, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. And you have those eyes through going to meet with those kids, developing those relationships, knowing their names, stopping by their practices, but also not micromanaging the things that those coaches are doing either too. So it's a balance. It's a really strong balance. I mean, another strong program, Levitt, what Mike Hathaway has done up there with that football program. I mean, just, Turner's a football factory.
Oh yeah.
But it's, Mike's involved with everything in a positive way. So I think it's empowering your lower level coaches and making those connections is really high school sports are so transitive. You don't get to sign a kid to a legacy contract or, a super max. At best, you're going to get them for 4 years, and that's
Right.
it. And it's a project for 4 years. Very rarely do, there are those special occasions where you get that polished product coming in as a freshman, but it's a project for 4 years.
And there's really nothing cooler, and I've seen this some here, where you go to a tournament game and then the next morning, it's a Friday night tourney game, and then Saturday morning those players are coaching kindergarten, first grade basketball.
Yep.
And those little kids are just like, whoa, that's so and so. Oh my gosh. And it's so cool for those kids. And I'm sure it's cool for the varsity athletes as well, but it's a real imprint on those little kids.
it's a tremendous imprint on those little kids. I mean, when you're a varsity athlete, you're the rock star of your community, especially for the younger athletes. And so, um, it's important to be there and be seen and conduct yourself in a positive way. And if you do those things, you empower those kids. They see that this is what it's supposed to be, and that just continues to plant the seed. It creates a love for the game, and it creates a love for competition.
Yeah. So let's take a quick detour. So Spruce is going to look a little different next year. The Spruce girls
Mm-hmm.
losing a little bit of talent to graduation. How do you transition? Because I think the program's gotten strong enough where at least my expectation is that you'll still be in the mix. And B South kind of went from, kind of got a lot more wide open this offseason.
Yeah, I actually haven't put a ton of thought into the basketball season, but I mean, that was a special senior group that Zach had up there, and I was just very lucky to be a part of that. With Jaden, Jasmine, Liz, Aubrey, Mary. I mean, there's five really great kids. Did I get all of them? I want to make sure I got all of them because if I forget one, they're going to come and steal the cat.
Oh, yeah.
But it was, really, really good. Just great program building, and so there's a talented freshman class coming up, and there's some talent that's still there. Maddie Grimaldi had a really great freshman season. um, Riley Small is a really good interior player. She plays really good defense inside. She's going to contribute, and the team just I think, like you said, especially with Bailey and Olivia going to Mount Vert Academy now, I think that does change the dynamics of B South. But Wells, Yarmouth, they're always going to be tough teams. I don't think Oceanside is going anywhere. Matt's a very talented coach as well. So
No, I don't think so either.
no, Lake Region. So I think, I've thought the last couple of years that the B South girls tournament is probably one of the toughest ones to win. It's a bloodbath in B South. So no, and
I
I
think
think
Biddeford will be really good, actually. It's, you know,
yes, Biddeford will be really good. I'm just now I'm panicked in the back of my head that I may have forgotten a kid, but no, I didn't forget a kid. There's only
it's
five. There's
like
only
it's like the Emmys where you forget your
it,
mom
it
and
is.
then you're like, "Oh, thank God I won another Emmy.
But,
I can thank my mom."
yeah, but I'm not getting played off the stage, which is good. Um, so yeah, and I mean they have some really tough crossovers this year. And there's some tough teams in the MVC still. I think the MVC is I think you can add a couple more teams to the mix. Yeah. Halldale graduated some talent, but I think they're going to have a really good starting five. Um, I think also Madison, Adam Rich's second year there, they're going to be strong as well. And Spruce is going to be there in that mix as well. So I know in my conversations with Zach, he likes the athleticism of the group. And he's a good coach. He's gonna
Yeah.
maximize everything that he can out of that group too. So
And it helps to have, and I always say that I think it really helps the situation you guys have where a former head coach is the assistant coach and is not trying to push the head coach out the door. It's just a different perspective to have than an aspiring assistant or, one of those old school assistants who's been an assistant forever. I think the experience of being a head coach is invaluable.
and I'll say too, like I think what made it work too was like that perspective. Like I had no desire to move one seat to the left or the right, depending on which bench we're in. I was extremely content where I was, but I think what made it really work was Zach and I get along really well. And we just collaborate really, really well together. Always open to listening to things. I can count on one hand the number of times in 2 years that we ever had a major disagreement about anything, and I can count on maybe one finger the number of times that it ever got like elevated above a conversation. So I think that helps. And when you have a solid coaching staff, and I've had great coaching staffs. I've been part of great coaching staffs. Coaching in Winthrop football. Had some really good assistant coaches when I was at Halldale. When the kids see the coaching staff working as a team, they buy in so much quicker. There's so much more empowerment for the assistant coaches. It really makes everything work super, super well when you're able to have that good collaboration at the top.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So we'll go back to football. The game I went to was pretty interesting. As Foxcroft at Oceanside, because
Mm,
I was already there for a field hockey game, so why not? Um, Oceanside scored the first 14 points of this game. Zeb Foster ripped off a 70-yard touchdown run on their first play, and then they had another big run from in their next possession, and everyone's sort of looking around, going, "Whoa, we all thought this was going to be close." And then Foxcroft ripped off 30 straight,
hmm
which was nuts. And including the backbreaker was Oceanside gets a stop on 4th and 1 or 4th and goal at the 1 yard line, and then on the very first play gets sacked in the end zone for a safety. And then you're just like, well, okay, this is over. So here's my question: how good is Foxcroft? Because they look to be just a train.
I think they're very good, and I think they're very motivated. I mean, they had the D South State Championship. They had it all but wrapped up,
Yeah.
and Wells came back to win that game. Wells still has not lost to a Class D school since Class D came back. Um,
Wow. Is that true?
it
Wow.
is true. It was Foxcroft was going to be the ones to knock them off, and I think they're very motivated. Coach White is an exceptional coach up there. They've got a great weightlifting program. They have tremendous facilities, and I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form, especially for that senior class, that they have a ton of motivation to get back to that state game. I went at we were doing the game at Bonnie Eagle, and we saw the halftime scores, and we saw that Oceanside was up 14-0. Like, Rob and I's jaws collectively hit the floor, along with Ethan Snow, who is running our camera. He does a lot of great work for WHOU. Ben Grant, our producer, like all four of us just went, that's got to be a misprint. It's got to be a typo. It wasn't, but Foxcroft came back to win. I mean, they're going to have a really, really good test this week with undefeated Winslow as well.
Oh
Winslow's
yeah.
been rolling. I mean, you look at, you know, two similar teams when you look at offensive and defensive output. Winslow scored 102 and only let up 13, and Foxcroft scored 101 and let up 21, and 14 of those points came against Oceanside. So, you look at their schedule, they've played Belfast and Foxcroft's played Belfast and Oceanside. And then Winslow's played MCI, and who did they play last week? They played Madison. So, I mean, this is going to be the first really, really good test for both these teams this week. And that game is at Poulin Field in Winslow on Saturday. That's going to be a really good Saturday afternoon clash in D North. Could be the two teams that end up in the regional final for D as well. So, but I wouldn't shovel dirt on John Baptist yet. I know they're 0-2, but they've played two Class C teams in Nokomis and Herman. So, don't shovel dirt on the Crusaders yet. I think they're going to be in the mix before it's all said and done in D North.
And in D South, you saw Winthrop in the game that really I think was the big surprise of week 1, the 30-0 win over Levitt.
Mhm.
Like, how good is Winthrop?
I think
And
Winthrop
and
is.
how good is Levitt? Is because Levitt blew I forget who they blew out this week, but it was
Brunswick.
Brunswick. They blew out Brunswick. So there's sort of there's not really much you can tell from that, I think.
Well, I think you can tell a lot from who Levitt played through the first 3 weeks with their scrimmage was against Lawrence. Lawrence is one of the top teams in B North. Their
Hmm.
exhibition game was against Thornton Academy, and I think Thornton Academy could lay claim to best team in the state. And then they played Winthrop, who is one of the top teams in D South. So it was not an easy 3 weeks, and they didn't make things easier on themselves. They had several turnovers. And Winthrop capitalized on those turnovers, capitalized on short fields. They muffed a punt. They fumbled a kick return. There was an interception, a fumble, and Winthrop took advantage of those mistakes. And Winthrop limited their mistakes in that week 1 game, and didn't really allow Levitt to take advantage of those. I mean, Levitt had an 80-yard touchdown pass on their first drive called back for an offensive pass interference. So, I mean,
Ouch.
things like that, and cleaning those things up. But I mean, Coach Hathaway and his staff will have that thing going. And we said it on the broadcast, like that week 1 game, especially with only one full week of doubles, and then you have your exhibition game, and you really only have 4 or 5. You have your scrimmage, 4 or 5 practices, and an exhibition game. You really don't have the same volume of practice time to work on some of those things. So some of those operational pieces, substitution pieces, discipline pieces, they kind of fall through the cracks a little bit. And I think through the first couple of weeks, the games that we've seen too on WHOU, we've seen that. Talking to Coach Cooper at Bonnie Eagle, they would use the morning session of doubles in the second week to install their special teams. They didn't have that, so
Hmm.
we saw some special teams miscues from them as well. So no, I think Levitt is a very good team. I think they're very well coached. And they, Winthrop certainly earned the win on opening night. I'm not saying that Levitt handed it to them, but Levitt did some things that helped Winthrop along the way. But Winthrop took advantage of those mistakes, and good teams take advantage of other teams' mistakes. So I think that both of those teams are really, really good. Winthrop has a really tough test with Freeport this week. They handled Lisbon last week. Freeport can be dynamic. They like to spread the ball out, throw it around. I think Winthrop has a really, really tough defense. Coach Staunton back as the head coach is doing a really great job there as well. So, and Winthrop has had a run of success. I mean, they've been, to the last four, when it was statewide, either the game right before the state game or a regional final in the last couple of years. So Winthrop's one of those teams that's always there. They only graduated one senior last year. So
Oh, wow.
they're playing really, really good football. And those kids seem to be bought in there too. So, I don't think that week one result was, I don't think it was not a reason to sell on Levitt at all. I think that you buy on Levitt and you buy on Winthrop. I think those are two really talented football teams.
So what I'm hearing is if they play that game 10 times, you're not going to get a lot of 30 to nothings.
No, I don't think you're going to get a lot of 30 to nothings if they played 10 times. And I think timing when you catch a team too is important. Both those teams are going to be wildly different weeks 6 and 7 than they are in weeks 1 and 2 as well. So, I think there is a timing aspect to it too. But again, I think, Levitt made mistakes. Winthrop took advantage of them. And I think, I know that great teams do that. And I also know that Levitt's well coached and those mistakes aren't going to happen, or they're not going to happen with regularity.
Especially if you're replacing, the amount of talent that Levitt replaced. So
Oh
week
yeah.
one is going to be a little choppy regardless.
Yes, exactly. But I think, and no disrespect to Brunswick, but I think that was good for what ailed Levitt to play Brunswick last week. But then again, they turn around and it doesn't get any easier for them this week. I know that they had a tough one coming up this week. Who did they have? They got Deering this week, so they're playing up a couple classes. They're playing up a class this week to play Deering, and then they've got Coney after that and Freiburg. So, they have a very, very tough schedule. So for them to go out and get that win against Brunswick was big for them. But again, look who they've played. They've played Lawrence, who's, defending state runner-up from last year, Thornton Academy, defending state champion in A, and Winthrop, defending regional runner-up from the year before. So that's a very tough 3 opponent stretch to open up your season, especially with reduced practice time.
Sure. So, which game? Let's look forward to week 3. Which game are you and Rob doing? Are you and Rob are doing the whole season?
We are doing the whole season. We have a whole.
Are you the WHOU's number 1 crew? Are you the Tom Brady of WHOU?
We brand ourselves as the game of the week, but WHOU does a great job of covering multiple games. Dale Duff and the Northern crew cover kind of that area, and Rob and I and our group, we work Central and Southern Maine. We're going down to Wyndham, so we're going back down to where we were last week, or that general area. We've got Wyndham and Thornton Academies. Should be a really interesting game. Thornton Academy 1-1 coming off that loss to New Hampshire, and then you've got Wyndham 0-2. But Wyndham's had a couple of tough games to open up their season as well. They played Portland last week. Portland is exceptionally good as well. So and Wyndham has been tough. They've been a tough physical football team. Looking forward to that one. Should be a really good one. Tough loss to Noble, 28-14, but Noble's undefeated. They're the top of A South. The geography of Class A sometimes throws me off that Portland is in A North.
Throws me off in basketball all the time.
It does. So, but Wyndham has Thornton Academy coming up this week. And their opponent's record is 4-0, and facts don't have feelings, numbers don't lie. The two teams they've played are undefeated. So
You're speaking my language.
there you go. Yes. Stats oriented, numbers, back it up with
That's
stats.
oriented. Exactly.
Yes.
All right. Any other games that jump out at you this week that look
Oh,
interesting
there
that you're
were.
sort of keeping an eye on?
Well, that the Coney game this week, Coney Falmouth, that one really sticks out to me. I also think another good game. Looking forward to the week ahead. Levitt and Deering, that one also kind of pops off the page. Herman and Hamden, that's always a good matchup up north. As well, Foxcroft and Winslow, I think also that's a key game for the North standings. Two undefeated teams. So some good undefeated matchups coming up here. And I think that Winthrop Freeport game is kind of intriguing to me as well. Freeport coming in at 1-1. They lost to Wells last week. So those are kind of the interesting ones that I kind of have circled in the back of my mind for certain.
Okay, so then my final most important question is, when are you and Brandon bringing back the podcast?
Oh, that's a great question. I think
you were nice enough to have me on the podcast when I was still anonymous.
It's true.
And
we
did the whole cloak and dagger thing. And
yes. We've talked about it a little bit, but I don't know. That might be something we look at as a wintertime project, maybe to get back into that. But beginning of the school year is tough to do some of that.
Sure.
No, it's something that we've talked about. I mean, it was a fun project during COVID. We started it before COVID, and then COVID kind of hit, and we had to pivot. I think we had some of our favorite guests were some of our COVID guests. We had Amy Vachon was the last guest on the podcast. And one of the things I remember from that is we asked her about, the lack of female varsity coaches in the state of Maine, and what she did with that and running with that, and what she's done for female coaches in Maine is just phenomenal. So,
oh yeah,
it's just, if that was the last episode of that podcast, and that's the legacy we can look back on, is that we, at the end of the day, we did nothing other than ask a question, and Amy did a phenomenal job running with it, with everything that she's done. Then
the light bulb went off above her head, and she went, "Oh wait,
Josh Longstaff was on the show with us. Let's see, who else do we have on? We had Tom Maines. That was a fun episode. That was one where we were doing it all remotely, and we literally hit record, and Coach Maines talked for an hour and a half almost straight. Like, we couldn't insert a question, and the stories were phenomenal. And it was all, we had a blast doing it. We've talked about bringing it back. Maybe we'll see when wintertime rolls around and things settle down a little bit, but I know life is exceptionally busy for both of us right now too.
Sure.
So.
Well, you've got all the badges you've got to earn. You got to do 15 different jobs tourney week.
I have them all. They hang on my wall with great pride.
You're not even doing them all at the same venue.
I was juggling around. Let's see. The only venue I did not call a game, I have not done a game at in any way, shape, or form, would be the Cross Center. Although when I was in college and I worked for WZON way back, if you remember WZON up in Bangor, I did do some tournament work there. So I have done, but not, I've done the old auditorium, but I don't have any credit or standing in the Cross Center up there.
It's a wild place.
Yes, it is.
Wild, wild west.
I've been in that building like 4 times, and you speak of Wild West. One of the times I was in there was Zach and I somehow acquired bull riding tickets, and we went and watched the professional bull riding tour up there. So, that brings it all back together at the end.
There you go. All right. So the game today, this week, is on WHOU. Is it a Friday or a Saturday game?
Saturday at 1:00. We'll go on a little before 1:00 from Wyndham. Should be a good one.
Right.
Pretty beautiful weather, and really, really interesting game. Might try and go and check out that Coney Falmouth game though on Friday night. That seems like a really fun game to go check out.
That could be a good one. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for doing this. And you and Rob do a fantastic job as always. And love listening to it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on. I know we've been trying to coordinate and make this happen for a while now, so great to be on. Also, just again, want to give a shout out to Coach Lippert and the Autism Awareness Night. Thank you for the shirts. I think it was 39 different teams participated in it in this year.
Yeah,
So
it's awesome cause.
yes, great
Hopefully we bring it.
cause.
Let's bring it to basketball.
Excellent. That'd be great. I know that Coach Farrington said that bring it to basketball too. So
Yeah, seems like a no-brainer.
yes, it does. Awesome. So I can't wait to see how the spreadsheet hates on everybody after this week.
Perfect. All right, thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Lucas.
Okay, that's the show. Thanks again to Jarod for joining me. He does a great job on WHOU and really everywhere he broadcasts, and everything he does is great. He works really well with Rob Kennedy, so if you haven't subscribed yet to WHOU, you should definitely do that. And that's gonna be it. This has been a production of MaineBasketballRankings.com, your source for the most comprehensive coverage of Maine high school basketball from Ashland to York and everywhere in between. This podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts and a bunch of places you don't. If you enjoy this, please leave a nice review because it really does help out with the algorithms. And of course, if you subscribe to the site, it helps make stuff like this possible. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Thanks for listening.